at 5 p.m. We'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. Make it quick here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Board Mission Statement, the Nelson County Board of Education, representatives of our citizens and entrusted with their children, pledges to support the mission of the Nelson County School District by setting visionary direction to effective policy, oversight, and efficient resource management. Vision statement is quality education now, learning for life. Real quick, I'll just, one, thank the rest of the board members. I know that the weather is extremely terrible. I'll just put it that way, and especially I know Mr. Norman, you've been out there working some long hours with Nelson County Road Crew trying to help keep the roads clear for us. And I'll also throw out too, I don't know who it is, Mr. Orr, but some staff within our school district have done some bang-up jobs on clearing out the school parking lot. Once we get those roads where they're passable, we're going to have our parking lots ready for those kiddos as well. So,
They've been working hard.
appreciate that. Moving on into item 2, changes to the agenda.
As probably most of you have noticed, we're really doing things differently tonight as a result of the weather and being out of school. So we are going to skip over the student and stakeholder engagement portion of the agenda. Everything else was pretty slim to begin with, but we'll bring those Expect the Best award winners and students from Boston back to us at the next meeting so that they don't miss out on their turn to show what they do for us on a day-to-day basis.
Sounds good. So then we'll just move on into section or agenda item 4, which is operations consent agenda. This consists of the information, personnel actions, treasurer's report, bills and claims, munis report, leaves of absence, minutes from previous meeting, overnight out-of-state trips, and fundraiser requests. All of these are items that we were provided for at the end of last week as part of our agenda pack.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Pate. Second by Ms. Berry. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on into item 5 then, which is efficient resource management, and 5A, which is the BG1 for the Nelson County Early Learning Center expansion.
We're with the slimmed down staffing that we have today, filling multiple roles. So I'll be operating the computer and talking a little bit, messing both of them up, I'm sure. We've talked about this BG1 a number of times. A reminder that this is really intended to start the process of an expansion at the Early Learning Center. And really what we've done with this application is to say we want to begin work at the Early Learning Center as soon as we can. And so we've opened up the process and really kind of asked for our whole Christmas wish list for the ELC. We put everything in there, the full expansion, so that we can at least get the process going. Does not mean that we're committed in any respect to doing each of the pieces of the expansion, but it does get the process started so that we can hire an architectural firm and get the design phase underway. That's certainly a big part of the process. Lets us get rolling. Ultimate goal, of course, is to have work done that would allow us to have that expanded capacity available when we start the 16-17 school year.
And especially for Ms. Breeding and Mr. Norman. And correct me if I remember this incorrectly, Mr. Orr. For instance, whenever we did the Thomas Nelson BG1s, that dollar amount, we came in under the amount of dollars that were on that BG1. So again, this kind of gives us that cap area, and of course, as we go through the process, we may find out that costs are less, or we may, along working with architects and the whoever the construction manager is, decide to make changes that would also bring those costs down. But we do have to have some place to start. There any other questions about the BG1 on the Center.
There's no, doesn't need a motion on this, right?
No,
Yes.
we do need a motion on this.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Pate, second by Ms. Breeding. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on into 5B, school makeup days. And so we make sure that the meeting knows this. We're talking about one specific makeup day here, not the ones we've got this week. Is that correct?
That's correct, but we can go ahead and talk a little bit about that. So as soon as I get this the right size.
While you're bringing that up, we had already decided, I believe at the last board meeting, that the November 17th date in the fall we missed was going to be made up on February 13th, which was last Friday, which we've done. But we did have the January 27th date that we missed earlier this calendar year, and the proposal is March 13th for that day.
Yes, that's correct, and that's really the only decision that we're bringing before you at this point is to ask you to approve March 13th as that makeup day for the 22nd.
And that originally was what type of a day?
You would ask that, and I should have anticipated,
Okay.
I believe it was a flexible professional development day.
Okay.
So generally staff would have worked that off.
I was thinking that's what Sarah had mentioned during our work
Yeah,
session as well.
Yes.
But it was also marked as a potential snow makeup day
Yes.
on the calendar.
This was clearly indicated as such, and I will mention, not to confuse the issue, we're only asking you to approve this day in particular right now, but with the day that we missed today, we moved to the end of the school calendar. So at this point, we have days after Memorial Day that have already been designated as makeup days. And so we'll bring those to you for subsequent decisions, but really we've already designated them, and we've nowhere else to go except the end of the school year.
Okay, which extends the last day of school.
That's correct. We
Okay.
just tack them on at the end of this fall.
Okay, while it's not official, it would be something we could all, in our mind, already know that's how it's played out.
That's correct.
Okay, so then we just need a motion for this time being on March 13th as the makeup day for the missed day on January 27th.
I'll make a motion that we accept March 13th as our makeup day.
Motion by Ms. Berry,
Second.
second by Mr. Norman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 5C, which is the reciprocity contract update. Mr. Orr.
So, this has been a real, labor. I started to say labor of love. I'm not sure that would be appropriate. This is something we've been working on, and we've been kind of keeping you updated on the process as we move. Back in January, the board, did not approve the reciprocity contract with Bardstown City Schools. That really opened up a conversation. Damon and I have met with our counterparts in the city schools several times over the last week. And I, in fact, met with Mr. Holzclaw, just the two of us several times over the course of the last week. And we've gotten to a point where we are comfortable with the big ideas that are behind the reciprocity contract. What we don't have before you today is the contract. So we'll bring that to you at a later date because we've got some of the finer points that still need to be worked out. But at this time, some of the things that I'll highlight for you is that, first of all, we're establishing a starting number for out-of-district students in the Bardstown City Schools. And what we did is we based that on the number of those kids that are currently enrolled. And as of today, there were 579. We're suggesting that for simplicity's sake, we round that up to 580 and start with that. In a sense, that number is really arbitrary because the way this agreement will work once it's finalized is we'll reduce the number of those students on an annual basis once we get going. But that starting point was an important part of the discussion. Having identified that, one of the other things that we've agreed on is that number will be applied only to kindergarten through 12th grades. We talked about preschool, but it will not include preschool students, but we did agree on a joint registration process for preschool students moving forward. It really benefits both school districts as well as the community, because we'll be working with Head Start to make sure that that federal program is fully utilized, and we'll be working toward our increasing capacity with the Nelson County schools and the capacity that they already have. So that's going to be a step forward really for everybody involved that will be working together. Then for the 2015-16 school year, which we will start in August, what we will do, or what we have agreed to, I'm going to try to get this visible because I think it'll help everybody see what we're talking about. We'll take that 580 starting point for the 15-16 school year. Bardstown City Schools will be permitted to have that same 580 students in their K-12 programs. And what that does for their system is it keeps the number of out-of-district students from Nelson County flat. It does not reduce their budget, but it does not increase their budget. Over the last several years, they've had an average growth of about 28 students from Nelson County coming into the system. So it freezes that growth for the first year, holds their budget steady, and then we would expect to see some increase in the number of students coming from that hold steady school year 15-16. And beginning in the 2016-17 school year, that number of 580 out-of-district students in the K-12 program at Bardstown will be reduced by 30 students each year. So you see the accumulating number that the out-of-district students would be reduced in that right-hand column until we get to the 27-28 school year. So we start with a year of hold flat, and then we do 12 years of reducing by 15 students each year. So we'll take that number down from 580 by 180 students over the course of that time. Took us a little while to come to that number, but I want to frame our perspective of that number with some of the conversations that we had early on. And they kind of went like this. Number one, we felt like that the number of out-of-district students in the Bardstown schools was out of balance, proportional to the populations. We wanted to try to bring that equilibrium back a little closer to each other. It was not ever our intent to get equal numbers of out-of-district students in both districts. It was also not our intent to do anything that would damage the longevity of the Bardstown City Schools by taking such a heavy cut on them that it would be difficult for them to operate as a school system. And thirdly, we wanted to be sure that we maintained those students who are in the Bardstown City Schools with Nelson County addresses. So those out-of-district students that were already enrolled, it was of primary importance that we allow those students to finish in the school system where they are. No matter how much I may want to have our students in our seats, I would never want to pluck a student out, pluck a family out of that school system and have them relocate. That's a very difficult position for any family to be in. It's not something that this board ever felt was an appropriate step for us to take. So when you consider those intentions, those motives, those priorities that were set really by this board early on, I felt really good about the number being reduced by 180 over these 12 years that reduction is taken. The one thing that I would add, we do have, like I've indicated, several details that will be worked out. We'll work out an application, selection, and monitoring process so that it's fair for everybody that's involved. We've had a couple of early discussions about how we would do that, and I think we're going to be able to come to an agreement on those points very easily. But we wanted to go ahead and get this piece, particularly with the numbers of students for each year set out so that both school districts can budget and plan appropriately for their expenditures and for their staffing. And then the other thing that we will work out going forward is that if we get 2-3 years into this process, if either district feels like things aren't working as they should, for instance, if the monitoring process indicates that we're not reducing those numbers as we agreed, or in fact, if we're reducing those numbers too quickly. I'd like to believe, being the optimist that I am, that as people begin to shift back to the Nelson County Schools as a part of this plan, others will say, this looks like a good thing, it seems to be working well for those families, and I think we may have more momentum shift back in our direction. If so, that would be fantastic for us, but it would probably trigger a need to come back to the table and talk about whether that's in keeping with the original intent of the agreement as we've started. So that kind of gives you a big picture in a short time.
So if I look at this, and to make sure I can kind of recap just a few things. One, this is not the actual non-resident contract. This is a memorandum of agreement, which, if I understand correctly, Bardstown had discussions on this afternoon and were in line with it and in agreement with it.
That's correct.
Okay, and so this here allows us to say we've got an understanding and effect between both districts. It allows both yourself and Superintendent Hostfall to work on the finer details, which I believe is handled by the people that really need to handle that versus the school board on those fine specific details. And this does, like you said, it keeps in mind not damaging current families. Like you said, we want to make sure that families that currently have students in the Bardstown school system who are living in the county school district can continue to do so. It allows us to know a time frame. We're looking at, I think, what's it, 12 years that we've been looking at doing this, with a goal of reducing that gap, that difference between how many out-of-district students they have versus how many out-of-district students we have.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, let me, this is just, which you all heard me say this, I'm not sure. I would have wished that we could have started this earlier, I really do. But, tell me if I'm wrong on this, if I take the 180 from the 580, that leaves 400 kids that they have virus,
Yes.
not counting their staff,
Not counting your staff, so not counting preschool.
and which is another how many?
At this point, that's about 180 together.
Member staff by KRS cannot be counted in this.
That, well,
They
but
don't have to
they
be
count theirs
part-
differently than we, to me, a staff person would be somebody that gives the full benefit.
We've had those discussions,
Yeah.
and that was part of the understanding, and we're on the same page with the way those are defined. And what the KRS says simply is any employee of the district, so that could include the coach, based on what the KRS says.
But those are some of those details to make sure, and what you and Superintendent Hostfall will be making sure to finalize.
That's correct.
Okay, I can go with this as long as it's stipulated that at any time, if we feel like it's not just, not equal, or not something, that we go, whoa, you know, let's take a look, let's step back and take a look and see what we're doing here.
Sure.
On either side.
And I think is that what, a little bit of what you were alluding to 3-4 years down the road, if things are going too fast, too slow, it gives the opportunity that we can all sit down and look at it again.
Yes, that is what I was talking about, and I would say, I do think we need to give it a couple or 3 years to see how things are going. Nothing's gonna work out perfectly on the first go around, probably, but I think as time goes by, we're gonna get a sense of whether we're moving in the right direction.
But let's say again though, let's say just for the sake of saying this. If there's more, let's say a couple of years down the road, we see more than, good stuff coming our way. You know what I mean? More students coming our way than what we anticipated.
Okay.
Is that what you're talking about?
That's
I
one
mean, we're not gonna
possibility.
tell somebody they can't come.
No, that's not my intention.
Yeah, we're not gonna tell somebody we can't come.
Right.
We're just gonna reevaluate what's going on
Right.
and see what it is. But
Right.
we're not gonna tell Lulu that she can't come to us.
I don't think so.
There's Lulu again.
I know,
sorry.
I'm
Let
sorry.
me- But we're not gonna tell her she can't come, just because she is out of that number.
Well, and keep in mind that, so I'll use Lulu in this case as well. So if Lulu lives in a Nelson County address, obviously, I mean,
That's
she
what I'm
would be
saying.
coming in. Yeah, I think what I hear Superintendent Orr getting at is potentially if we saw the reductions accelerating, it may not end up being a 12-year contract. I mean, we may be hitting these goals much quicker, and there may be some things where we do have discussions with Bardstown, because like you said, the intent of this has never been to either hurt families or to have any sort of negative impact on the Bardstown City Schools. And so we want to make sure that we are good partners throughout all of this.
Okay.
I just wanna make sure when the student that does decide to come back, we are as good or better than Bardstown. That's what I want to see, was a good product.
So you saying that something?
I mean, y'all, I know y'all heard it over and over and over, but I don't want someone to come from Bardstown, from Delta County and say, oh, watch out back in Bardstown. I wanna make sure we keep striving to make the best we can be. And I'm sure, I see a lot of great things going on with that, and the staff, and that, love seeing that, but
Something that I've heard you say, Mr. Orr, is one of the things that really started this conversation with the pride that six of us, our entire board team has in the Nelson County school system. And that's really one of the things that has driven a lot of this conversation, is how proud we are of the hard work that is going on in our schools, and we want to make sure to continue to do that like you're
yeah.
saying.
I'm just new and I don't
No.
completely understand, but want to keep striving.
You understand very well. You're right on it. And I just want to say that while this has not been an easy process, because it's been tough to work through from both our perspectives, ours as a board and from theirs as well. I do want to say I've been very happy to have good partners across the table working with us, and that's not how things have tended to work out across the state when this kind of thing has been discussed, and it would not have happened if Mr. Holtzclaw and his team were not fully supportive of the work that needed to be done, and you guys as well. So I really appreciate the support that both sides have brought to getting this work done.
Well, it just looks better if we can work it out ourselves as opposed to saying, let's the law,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think
It always looks better, and we're willing to be cooperative, and we're willing to do the best for kids. I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Well, and we also need to maintain a relationship with Dry Bardstown. I think that this will help solidify that and maintain that positive relationship with them.
Yes, we are not, I would say, the normal way that this plays out in other school districts. So, I mean, I'll echo what you said, Mr. Lawrence. Both Superintendent Holtzclaw, Board Member Andy Stone, who was involved in the conversation, great people to work with. And I mean, I give a lot of kudos to Mr. Ward, because behind the scenes, at some point, finally I just kind of backed out and said, now I know that you all can handle it. I know that both him and Brent Holtzclaw have done a tremendous job having these conversations. Probably more conversation than you actually wanted to focus in on this, but for us to be able to get to this point in a matter of about 3 weeks, I believe, Mr. Ward,
That's about right.
whenever all of us have read in KSBA news articles that it has been years worth of conversations in other districts that did not go smooth and ended up in millions of dollars worth of legal fees. And we did this by just sitting down at the table and doing what was best for students within our community, both school districts. Yes.
I want to thank you, Mr. Orr, and you, Damon, and the Bardstown school system for the great job you've done. There was no hostility there, and y'all did a great job.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
It's been a good process. I appreciate all the support.
So with this MOA, Memorandum of Agreement, we do need a motion on it that we all are also in agreement. And again, there will be an actual non-resident contract that comes back at a later date, potentially even at next month's board meeting. It just depends on getting all those little behind the scenes minutia details that support what we see right here in this MOA.
Correct.
Motion by Mr. Pate, second by Ms. Breeding. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on into section 6, student stakeholder engagement, 6A, which is guest comments. Any person wishing to address the board may do so by following these rules. Individuals representing themselves are limited to 3 minutes. Individuals representing a group are limited to 5 minutes. Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address, and if you represent a group, state the name of the group you are representing. Do we have any guest adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Berry,
Second?
second by Mr. Pate, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion.
No, I'm out the chair.